I think we started. What do you guys think? Don't we usually see ourselves?
We should see ourselves.
I know they're listening.
No.
Yeah, I just did that.
Right.
It should say you're recording.
It did that.
Okay.
But see how it says here?
Yeah.
I hate Zoom. I don't even know if you guys can hear
Ask to
us.
start
I
the-
can see you.
You can
All
see
right.
it.
Yes,
Okay.
you've started.
Okay, great. Well, it's good to know. We can't see ourselves, so we don't know.
That may be better though, because then I get preoccupied with like looking at myself.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, great. So hello, everybody. And thanks for logging in tonight. And it is, what is it? It's March 29th. It's Good Friday. I'm sitting here with two beautiful women, so that makes it a great Friday.
Aw.
Great Friday. And we're here at the Merchant's House doing our like 1,455th show of Spirit of Science. So we want to thank everybody for logging in. I don't know how many people we got. We're coming up on over 30, which would be great. We are here tonight with my good friend and a very special person, Kathy Nadal. And we are going to be talking about our investigation we did at the Edgar Allan Poe house last month. Was that in
Yes.
February or
Yes.
January? It was
It
last
was
month in
February.
February. But before we get to that, we got to first make our announcements. Do you have anything you need to say before we get into the evil empire next door?
Well, I just want to say that we're missing Dr. Lee.
Right.
He was traveling and hopefully he'll come in at some point tonight.
Yeah, he
Um,
should. And unless he's having some kind of issues. We do have a chat room and a bunch of ways you can ask us questions, or if you can't hear us or can't see us, just let us know because we're, amateurs at this stuff at this point. Okay, so before we get into the show, we want to talk about what's going on right next door. There is the evil developers we talk about every week, and they are looking and hoping to put up a small hotel, an 8-story hotel right next door, right here, if you can see where I'm pointing. They want to knock this garage down, and Mara Lane just raised her hand. Hello, Mara. And let's see, yeah, if you have any messages, or if you want to say anything, just go over to the little chat, and we can read your question and answer it, hopefully for you. But back to these evil people next door, they want to build this hotel. Now, the Merchant's House and the, I guess, the Landmark Preservation Committee, both brought in experts and architects and engineers to evaluate what construction would do to the Merchant's House. And I think everybody's in agreement that it would be just catastrophic for the for any kind of construction going on here at the Merchant's House. I'm going to show you what one of the main concerns is. Hopefully you'll be able to see all of this plaster woodwork, plaster work around the corners of the ceiling here. Now, all of this, it's all plaster, it's all handmade in the early 1800s. This house was built in 1832. So this stuff's like, what, 100 and, what is that? What's the math? It's like 3,000 years old. And we can't afford to lose this. New York City can't afford to lose this house. So we ask everybody that is logged in tonight and watching the show to please go to the Merchant's House website, which is merchantshouse.org, and fill out a petition. It only takes literally less than 30 seconds. You just got to go in there, give them your name, give your zip code, and you can send the letter to the proper people, and they'll get this letter that says, please don't build anything next to the Merchant's House because you would just wreck it.
I think another point that I want to make, Dan, is that no one wants this development. The community does not want it. The community has, for the last 12 years, asked the community board to vote it down, which the community board has. No one wants it here. So it's not like it's going to be a benefit to the community. It's not like it's going to enrich the lives of New Yorkers. So it's really just only to line the pockets of the developer, right? It's not for the benefit of anyone except for him or her.
I mean,
or they.
there's nothing wrong with building a hotel and making some money if that's the way you make your way in the world. But at what cost? You know, I mean, if this guy's
Right,
an architect or an engineer and a building developer, he should appreciate this place probably more than anybody
mhm,
and not want to do
Right.
anything to damage it. So, either that or he's gonna have to have a talking to. And, one of the people we could bring over to have a talking to with him is our friend here, Kathy Nadal. And, do you wanna talk a little bit about Kathy and
Sure.
tell all our friends what Kathy is? And we'll talk behind her back, right in front of her.
I
Okay?
will. I'm gonna actually read from Kathy's official bio.
All right, and I will scroll down when you need.
Okay.
All right.
Oh, I am too of that, David Kessler.
Yeah.
Okay. Kathy Nadal is a witch. She's a witch. She is the Reverend and Our Lord and Lady of the Trinacrean Church in Salem, Massachusetts, founded by Italian Strega Reverend Lori Bruno. Catherine has worked as a psychic medium in Salem, Massachusetts for 8 Halloween seasons. She's worked for shop owners Christian Day and Reverend Barbara E. Savransky. She has been a certified psychic medium with the Forever Family Foundation since 2013, and that is the foundation that certifies mediums, right?
Correct, in Long Island.
Okay. She realized her psychic abilities at age 9. Catherine is a registered nurse and retired Army colonel who served 30 years. She is a certified grief educator from Dr. David Kessler's grief training program, the best. In December 2023, she began to host a weekly radio show on 1490 WWPR in Tampa, Florida, called Bringing the Darkness to the Light. Over the years, she has collaborated with Buffalo paranormal investigators Daniel Bucci, executive producer Dan Sturges, and Chance Kelly. Paranormal investigations include Iron Island Museum, Merchant's House, Thomas Paine Cottage, the Chance Theater, Edgar Allan Poe Cottage, Lizzie Borden's house, and private homes. Catherine has worked as a psychic medium in Salem, Massachusetts for 8 Halloween seasons. She is the author of 2 books, Seeing More Than Clouds in Your Coffee, and She Danced by the Light of the Moon. Catherine has been a guest on Coast to Coast with George Norrie and Signs of Life Radio. Catherine runs her company Dream Central Station LLC and resides in Westchester County, just north of New York City.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Welcome, and you know what's the best part about Kathy living in Westchester County, just north of New York City, is I get a ride home.
I was thinking about that.
Right by my neighbor, is that okay?
Yeah.
Just invited her.
My bodyguard.
Yeah, I gotta work around the corner. All right, so, you know, that bio is great, but I've been friends with Kathy since, you know, we thought 2011, 2013. So it's been at least, it's been at least 10 years. And the way I came across Kathy's name was through the Forever Family Foundation. We were doing, so it definitely was 2011 because that was the year we did investigations every month. And I was trying to find mediums to bring that didn't know me and didn't know where they were going. So I would go to the Forever Family Foundation and find everybody. They're out on Long Island, and I've worked on their medium certification quite a number of times.
Oh,
I was one of the sitters.
Yeah,
And
and I think we actually had common friends, actually,
yeah,
that expand.
right.
Our family.
Yeah, so it's been great, and Kathy is she's been, you know, a big supporter of mine. So when I call Kathy, you know, hey, what are you doing on Friday? We're gonna do a paranormal investigation. That's me. I call the pretty girls to go look for ghosts. So, you know, I did the same thing to Kathy and in February, and Matilda, how did you were sort of the point person for this investigation. I kind of just showed up. So how did it all come about to get into the Poe house?
So we were brainstorming some Poe programming for the Merchant's House, and I just said, hey, it would be great if we could do an investigation at Poe Cottage. I've never been there, had never been there myself at the time. So we reached out to Poe Cottage and sort of got this set up. And we were able to go to Poe Cottage on the night of Virginia Poe's death anniversary, which was January 30th, I think it was. I think it was.
Yeah, I think you're right.
January 30th.
Yeah.
We went there It was myself, Dan, Kathy, Dr. Lee, and some, I want to say observers, right? I mean,
That's a polite way of putting.
bystanders is not the correct term. We also had Andrea Janes with us. She's a Poe expert, Poe scholar. And so we did a paranormal investigation and nothing happened. We didn't get anything that we look for when we do a paranormal investigation. We didn't get changes in temperature. We didn't get full body apparitions. We didn't get any visual anomalies on camera or in front of us. We did not hear sounds. We
got skunked. We got skunked big time as far as any kind of equipment or collecting any kind of data.
right.
The evening wasn't really conducive to a paranormal investigation. It was a very, very small house.
It's extremely small.
And I mean, you could fit the first floor in the front parlor.
Yeah.
Just about. And the house was built probably around the same time as the Merchant's House in the 1800s at some point. And so just very, very tiny and too many people packed in there. So it was really sort of impossible to do a proper paranormal investigation. But,
yeah.
you know, I did some recordings and like I said, nothing came up on the recordings. The only positive part of the night was Kathy
Right.
and the things that she was picking up in the house. And we'll ask Kathy, and we're talking about it like she's not here. Kathy, now when this is something I'm actually really interested in, when you're doing a walkthrough like we did at the house, and we had, you know, like I said, too many people there, but Kathy's just walking, and I've done this with you on a few investigations, and you're just talking almost like a stream of consciousness. After the fact, do you remember what you're saying? Like, I don't think you're not in a trance or anything. No, but it's just such a free throw or some things you might go, oh, sort of remember that. Yeah, but
that's right. So usually, like, it's kind of interesting because I've done a lot of work with you, and you know how strict I am. I always tell everybody, like, don't tell me anything, you know, just, you know, let me do what I do. And
you didn't know where you were going.
No,
when you had no idea where she was going.
see, that's another good thing about Kathy is, Kathy, I need you in the Bronx on Friday, but I can't tell you where you're going.
Yeah.
But you don't have to be there at 7, okay? And Kathy goes, okay, you know, and so about an hour before we were supposed to be there, I sent you to the
important to me is that I keep everything the way I'm very strict with all my work, and I don't want anyone to tell me anything. Even when I do private sessions for readings, I don't want anyone to tell me anything. And I usually kind of walk ahead of everyone, right?
Yep.
And at the Edgar Allan Poe house, I actually felt very much directed to just, I want to go in this direction, and then I went in that direction, and you know, I was repeating all this stuff, and after a while I turned around and I'm like, does someone want to say anything? Like, you know, and everyone was just like following my lead with just this blank stare, like they weren't like nodding or smiling.
It was great too, because
I just kept going. And then the staircase in that place is really amazing. I had never seen such a crooked staircase. And then when I get to the second floor, you know, I'm doing what I'm doing with Edgar, but I think I even stopped and I brought through a family member of yours in the middle of my whole conversation of doing the Edgar. I stopped and I did all this with you, and then I turned around and I went back into that. And that's the second time that's happened. I did a lot of work with Chance Kelly at the Thomas Paine house, and I was able to kind of bring through, you know, a family member to a living participant of the investigation. But the person that was with us, that's the Edgar Allan Poe expert, she was verifying a lot of the information that I gave. So,
and so was the person who is the
caretaker.
caretaker.
Right, Roger. Yeah, Roger was great because I told him before you even got there to, you know, when Kathy's going around and when she's talking, don't give her any information, just yes or a no. And if she asks, am I going in the wrong direction? Just say yes or no.
Yeah.
And he was really, really good at that because I was like, is Kathy getting any of this? Because he had a stone face on, and And then suddenly we were like, okay, well, how'd that go? And he was like, oh, Kathy was right about this, and she was right about this, and right about this. I was like, wow, you
Yeah.
don't play poker with this guy Roger at the Poe house.
Yeah.
He's got a great poker face.
But I think the details of the stuff that came through was really kind of alarming to him, actually, because
Yeah.
it wasn't just period stuff that I brought through. It was even stuff that had happened while the house has been there.
Yes.
Things that have happened to the property.
Right,
Things
like
that
the,
were.
like the break-ins, the 2 break-ins that had occurred
I
with that
went
door.
right to the front door and I said, something's wrong with this door, and and I went through this whole, I mean, you have it on tape. That's why I think that stuff is so important, because, other than being pulled into this area, I don't really remember the details. Like all the stuff upstairs, I don't remember.
Yeah. Hey, we have a question for you, Kathy, from Susan. I apologize in advance. It says, Kathy, how did you discover you had medium capabilities? The bio mentioned at age 9. Yeah, how did that all happen? Tell us the story of Kathy.
Got this in both of my books, but basically, I was a little girl in a Roman Catholic family. And I started to, my dad and I were pals, and he did a lot of things with me, and he wanted to go fishing. So I learned to fish. And one day he said, we're going to go crabbing. So he said, crabbing is a very particular skill, and we're going to have this kind of cage, and we're going to put bait in it. We're going to throw it in the water, and you're not going to touch the line. And the line is really a really long piece of rope. So my dad was pretty tall. He was like 6'2", and he walked on the dock down to a bunch of little boys that were kind of doing their thing. And I was by myself, and I heard so clearly, pick it up, pick it up, pick it up. So as I went towards the rope and I started to grab it, it started getting louder, and I started to pull it right out of the water. And I see my father like double timing it, like walking really fast, coming back to me, and I'm like, oh, I'm gonna get in trouble. But as I pulled it out of the water, it was the biggest blue crab that day on the pier, the dock. All these little boys came running over, and I was like, oh my God, so my father's like, wow, but that was the day that I actually said, I'm going to pay attention to that. And then once that happened, all of my dreams became so vividly clear. And I started dreaming about things before they started happening, and people getting sick, and, all of this stuff. So I thought, geez, this is kind of interesting. I started telling my dad, and that's when he started to shut it down. He's like, we don't do that. We don't want to do team stuff like that. You shouldn't be saying that. You're going to scare people. And then I just decided that I couldn't share it with people. And, but I kept that. And the older I got, I thought it would just fade away, and it actually got stronger. So
Was anybody in your family, did anybody else in your family have the same ability?
no, actually, no. And there's a lot of people deceased now in my family, but even before they were deceased, I kind of started asking, and no one has claimed anything on either side of the family. My mother's family, their background, they're McFarland, so they're Irish, and my father's family is Italian and Spanish, and nobody has claimed any of this. So it's got to come from somewhere. Just nobody has.
Yeah, it'd be interesting. It'd be interesting to find out if they're like a grandmother or somebody. Because we say that the ability skips a generation. So
but I mean, also at the time, both of my sides of the family were both Roman Catholic, so it would have been kind of staunched at that point on either side.
Right. Hey, before we go any further, let's say hello to Dr. Lee, who just came in. He is talking to us or with us tonight remotely. Hey, Lee.
Hey, yeah, sorry, I forgot I was in a different time zone, so sorry for being late.
Where are you? Where are you, Dr. Lee?
In Tennessee.
Tennessee.
Can you reveal what you're doing there?
No, can't go into it.
It's so secret.
Oh, believe I hear. And you can hear us okay, Lee? Because I've got a little thing here telling us that we're muted for some reason.
Yeah, I can hear you fine.
Oh,
Yeah.
I think that's not us though. That's some other.
No, that's totally us.
I don't think that's us because people can see us.
Yeah, it's a separate entity.
Yeah,
I was wondering what that was.
It's a separate entity.
Yeah.
Anyway. Good one. Good one. Right over my head. Anyway, okay, so back to Kathy Nadal. And I'm saying Nadal because Kathy just corrected me for the first time since I've known her. I've been calling Kathy Nadal, and it's Nadal. So now you talk about being certified, and before we get into that, I'm fascinated by your cups, your reading.
Oh, my Italian coffee cups, yeah.
Yes, please
Yeah.
tell
Coffee grounds.
everybody about that, because I
Coffee
think that
grounds,
that's
like
so cool.
Yeah, so that's kind of interesting. I talk about it in both of my books. The first book is mostly about reading coffee. And it's something that I did just in my late teens, early 20s. I was hanging around, my school friends and college friends, and even in my family, we would just drink Italian coffee. So I would lean over and say, "Oh, it looks like I could, say something about your cup." And one of my friends from Mercy College, Tommy Paracelli, and I tell this story a lot. He used to really like to go to a lot of the cafes in the Bronx, and he would always say, "All right, well, you're going to look at my cup." And he really kind of entertained it, but a lot of people in the Bronx knew him. So the minute I would take his cup, they would come over and they'd ask questions. And one day he just said to me, "Hey," he's like, "listen, the people that own this place want readings." So it was kind of interesting because he put what I thought was kind of like fun, to really have a lot of meaning to it, because I was not just giving psychic readings at that point. It was at that point that I realized that I just became very open, and I was doing a lot of communication with the other side. And, a lot of people are very scared of this work, so that's why sometimes they say, if you look at the cup, they have an image in that cup. It's either, or they could see it looks like a bear, or it looks like an angel, or it looks like an initial. They could see that, so they need that concrete evidence. But sometimes when you're just giving information, from your mind, it scares people.
Yeah.
And it's very different. It's definitely not for everyone, but that art is actually very, very special. Not everybody does it. And a lot of times when I do readings off of the coffee, it's other cultures, because there's a lot of superstition.
But so do you see like a picture in the coffee?
Yeah, you can see it on my website. I actually captured a lot of
What's
pictures.
your website?
No, it's dreamcentralstation.com.
Dreamcentralstation.com.
Yeah, and there's pictures in the book as well.
Oh, cool.
But when I do a reading, there's actually timelines. So that's why I can tell the person that this is in the past or this is in the future.
Okay.
So it's very interesting.
Is there a history to that? Is that coffee readings? Has that been done before? Or
It has. It's actually been done throughout history. I think
Oh,
it's tethology is the real name for it.
What is it?
Tethology. I'm
One more
probably mispronouncing it, but I wrote about it in my first book. There aren't many people that do it. Like you said, the tea leaves are more popular. I have a couple of friends in Salem, Massachusetts, that actually wrote a book on tea leaves and actually teach that in Salem.
Cool.
Yeah, so it's interesting. Yeah.
I wonder, Kathy, like, are there any, in the same way that like with ghost hunting equipment and like EVP recorders, audio recorders, all that, like there's like favorites, some that like people like more. Are there like particular types of coffee or something that people vouch for?
Well, I think it's interesting because I wrote about this actually in my first book, but I've had people say, they have to drink, certain types of coffee, and it doesn't matter as long as it brews. But then I've also had people that kind of like struggle drinking coffee, so they put a lot of sugar in it. And it's like, fine, I could read the sugar too, It pops off the side of the cup. And but believe it or not, I had a man once who was adamant he wanted a reading, and he wanted to prove his brother wrong. And his brother put him up to it, but he wouldn't drink coffee. He was really strong about it. So I said, "Well, what do you drink?" And he said, "Hot chocolate." So I actually drank his, had him drink it, and then I looked at it, and there's actually a foam with hot chocolate, and it created an image on the cup, and he was actually in shock about it. So I had said something that had to do with him and his brother, and it happened recently, and it just brought a lot of like, a lot of, it was validity for him.
Yeah.
It was, and he till this day he laughs about it because he was a non-believer, but he says like, the hot cocoa made me a believer. Not really, but it was the hot cocoa.
That's a good hot chocolate, boy. Let me tell you.
Kathy, I have a question. So how do you kind of set boundaries? Like, how do you shut it down? Because you can't just, it would be impossible to live, right, with 24/7 messages coming through.
Yeah.
So how do you open and close yourself, or how do you do that?
I think for me, it's I've always been this way, so I don't really go out every day saying I'm gonna get stuff on people, because it's like someone saying like, how could you be bilingual? Like, how does your mind know when to speak Spanish or English? Like, you just know. And it's become like part of my life. So I don't run up to people in stores. I feel very protected about people. I feel that that's very intrusive, and I feel like people have their own private lives. And you also don't know, I'm a registered nurse for more than 30 years, where people are, with their mental health. And some people are really struggling, especially being, a grief educator. You really learn that not everyone's willing to, have even conversations about their grief.
Yeah.
Not even going to spirituality or going to mediumship conversations with people, but people are really struggling in defining what grief is for them. So I think that's really the big piece. So I just, I walk through my life in a very respectful manner, and I just feel that my life is not for everyone. And I just feel like whoever is interested in experiencing that I'm there to help them.
Right.
Yeah, for me, it's really like another way of serving people.
But you don't experience overwhelm, right? Like you're
No.
good at managing.
I think mostly because even before I joined the military, my father really kind of like when I grew up, my father was very kind of strict. And literally when we were little girls, my family used to say, wow, we didn't even know that there were kids, with my parents, because we would just sit there. We wouldn't say a word. We would just sit there. And I think it's the way we grew up that, we knew when we should get involved and when we shouldn't get involved. And I think my family really kind of did that,
Yeah.
And I think in life that's helped me, especially being in the military. You really know when to, say,
Yeah.
you should say something and when you should not say something.
Along,
Right.
along those lines,
Go ahead, Lee.
yeah, I was just gonna say along those lines, Kathy, like, were there any situations in the military where like your ability, came up and was relevant to
Yeah.
help you, or?
Yeah, it's interesting because I write about it in my second book, and She Danced by the Light of the Moon. I was in Iraq, and even before Iraq, I would go out with teams of people, and I was never hiding that. I've always had kind of a higher rank, and whenever I was reporting to a commander, I would just go to the commander and say, listen, just so you know, I might do a radio show, I might do a filming, I might be like on a TV and, I told them straight up who I was and what I do, and none of them ever had a problem with it. Even some of the generals I had to tell, because we have a whole public affairs kind of concern for anybody that's doing work outside of the military. And, everybody kind of knew. So a lot of the guys on the teams that I would, instruct with or go out on, mission trips with, they knew about it. Some of them thought it was cool. Some of them were just like, okay, whatever. But when I went to Iraq, I found it quite difficult. First of all, when you go into another scenario, but then to take that scenario that's already different from the culture that you've kind of been, growing up in, add another culture, and then add a combat environment. So there's one or two stories that I really talk about in the second book, and I don't want to give it away, but it's a very interesting story. And it was this challenge for me, to be honest. And it was just feeling the energy. And I know a lot of people can go on for hours in discussion about energy, but I really feel energy. I can walk in a room and tell you if this is good or this is not good, and the problem is that you go into certain scenarios and it might be like not good, but you can't get out of it, So that was the piece that you can struggle with. Anybody on this Zoom call today can go to a party and say, I don't like the energy here, so I'm going to go home now. When you're there on orders for a year, you can't just say, well, I'm going to go home now,
I'm out of here.
So, you just really learn. But there are a couple of stories that I do mention in the book. But I have really great relationships with everyone in the military, even when I was serving about it. And I have tough skin. I could take the jokes, Colonel Nadal, you should have seen that coming, so, but I think that piece of it is, there is a lot to it. There's a lot of stories that I've known about that I would tell the soldiers. There's a very kind of well-known story actually where the Warrens had gone up to West Point.
Ed and Lorraine
yeah.
Warren, the paranormal investigation team, that they're really most famous, right, for the Amityville Horror, and then
And other
Annabelle.
things, yeah,
Annabelle.
yeah, a lot of other things too, but they were local to Connecticut, and
Mhm.
I think there is a well-known story actually that you could probably Google, but they had been brought in by a general at West Point. And they did an investigation up there, so, it's interesting to soldiers to know that,
Well,
places could be.
the military has also looked into the Stargate
Yes,
program
that's correct.
that I'm sure Lloyd probably talked about on
Yeah.
your show with him and Edwin May, who, the Stargate program was a remote viewing program by the US military to see if they could have people who are practiced in remote viewing being able to see other locations without being there. And that went on for decades, and they had some pretty remarkable results. And I have a girl I actually brought here. I can't remember her name off the top of my head right now, but her mom was a very famous psychic medium, and would work with the CIA and the FBI on missing person cases and stuff like that. And she told me this, and I took it with a grain of salt because I wasn't there, but that the military came to her mother when they were looking for Saddam Hussein. And they put a map down on the table. This is what her daughter said. A map down on the table, and they said, just point where he is. And she pointed, and I said, well, was that where he was? And she said, I don't know. And then like the next weekend, I went to go get my breakfast sandwich at the little luncheonette across the street, and on the TV was Saddam Hussein captured, and he was underground somewhere. And that was what her mom said. She said, he's in a tunnel. And so I just thought it was, I don't know if that's because she pointed to a spot on a map,
Right.
or if it was just a cool coincidence, but it was just like less than a week later.
Yeah.
that,
Oh, I bet the government and the military use a lot of what others might say is unverifiable
Right.
ways of.
Yeah, well, as far as like the Stargate program and using psychics, military using psychics, I read somewhere where a retired military person like yourself, Kathy Nadal, and they said that the information from psychics and mediums, they get more actionable information from them than they do spies on the ground.
I don't know. I've never done anything formally for the military, but I have done a couple of cases. for
Well,
the
but if
police.
you had, you wouldn't be able to tell us, right?
No, I haven't done any, but I have done some cases for the police.
Yeah. What, like missing person cases or?
One was they actually had photographs of the person, and they were looking for the person that had done that event.
Yeah. All right. How did it work out?
They don't get back to you.
Oh,
I never charge for anything like that.
right.
We provide them all the information, but they are not obligated to tell us the results. So, I mean, whatever we can provide to me is just another line of service,
Yeah.
But it is very interesting when you have two police officers sit with you in suits, business cards and stuff, then you're like, okay, well, they're taking this serious, So it's kind of good in a way to know that there are some in the law enforcement that are open to that.
Yeah. I think, and especially now with it's science, Lee, you can comment on the science end of it. I think so many people, for parapsychology is kind of a fringe science, a pseudoscience. And because it's not repeatable, it's not consistent, and a hundred other reasons. But when you have like the Rhine Research Center down in North Carolina, where they'll do the Zener cards, and you'll have one of the guys down there get like over 200 correct in a row from a distance of about a half a mile. Because it's not repeatable, they ignore that. Like, how could you ignore that? And I think a lot of the old kind of curmudgeon scientists who say, no, that's not repeatable, you can't do that in the lab, so it must not be.
You mean like Dr. Lee?
Like Dr. Lee. And but
See,
No, I was actually going to say the
He
opposite.
could be an old curmudgeon.
but now, yeah, but I'm saying now the younger people who are watching In Search of and all those shows, then now they're older and they're scientists like Lee, and they're way more open-minded than the older guys. Lee, you were just gonna say that I was wrong.
Well, yeah, sort of. I mean, a lot of that psi research is actually quite repeatable. It's just people just continue to ignore it. The problem is it's repeatable, but in a way that's not like mind-blowing. So it's like, because generally the way that all psychology studies and, related studies get their subjects is you just get a bunch of like college students because that's the easiest people to get in. And so these are just like random people, and yet like they are, repeatedly performing better than chance. It's just not like 99% correct. It's like 55% correct or like 54% correct, so but there are certain psi experiments that they've refined the technique over and over again, like particularly the Gansfeld experiment, to the extent that even quote unquote, the skeptics or people that are just reasonably skeptical about this stuff, but like there are some people that are just sort of very prominent in that case. Even them, like they're like, yeah, the Gansfeld's experiment paradigm, the methodology is the closest thing inside to something that is very repeatable, and not just the closest thing, like it is like there are meta-analyses that combine all of these studies, and they show that it's pretty convincing case, but it still ends up being like just right there on the edge of statistical significance. So even though it definitely is, when you take all those studies together, it's like far above statistical significance, it's still like, the average person would be able to predict like X amount more than chance, which isn't something that is, mind-blowingly world changing. So that's the issue. Like it does seem repeatable, but just not in a way that a lot of people, will sort of but so the other thing is too, that is, like I said, with the average random person from a college student or whatever, but there are these outliers that do perform on these tasks a lot better. It seems like, for instance, I think there's some studies that found that like music students, particularly even from like Juilliard, stuff like that, they found that they perform more accurately than like that 55% accuracy. So yeah, it's just, a lot of it just comes down to there's not a lot of funding for this research, and people are just very eager to discount it. So people just don't pay attention to it, even when those studies do come out.
I think what you're saying too, Lee, that it's not mind-blowingly statistically significant. I think that's sort of true too, like a lot of paranormal investigation stuff. Like people want full body apparitions. To them, that's a ghost or that's activity, right?
Yeah.
A slight change in temperature with no environmental reason behind it, or a sound, or a sudden smell or something like that is actually more commonly indicative of.
I think probably too, people have a misconception about psychics and mediums for the same reason, where, if you're a psychic, how come you don't win the lottery every day? And because psychics can't.
I had $1 for every time I heard that.
Right. But psychics and psychic mediums can't predict the future, right? You can't predict the future, can you?
I don't know.
Unless
I've done some good predicting. Though.
Yeah. But you could predict.
No, but I mean,
Lottery,
no, I don't do certain things like that. If I
Dan's about to to hire you.
I
I'm gonna get married, Lee.
No, it's funny though, because when I talk about working in Salem, just recently I had done a Zoom session, and at the end of the Zoom session, I had done this reading, and the woman said, I met you many years ago, and I said, I did. You did. I don't remember you. I'm sorry. I read for too many people. And she said, I actually have the piece of paper that you wrote on. And she said, I folded it up and I kept it in my wallet. And many years later, I looked at it, and everything that you had said, like completely was my life. Now I'm reflecting on it. She didn't even have my name. She called her friend and she said, we have to go and dig and find out who that was. And that's how she recently booked the appointment with me.
Wow.
But to me, I thought that was great, because for a scientific way, if you think about it, she has a piece of paper with her date, her name, she knows it's hers. She kept it in her wallet all that time. She has a date on it. She has a time limit of events that I said were going to happen by year. And now it's all these years later, and she reflects back and all those things happen.
So that's so interesting. So anybody at home can do this, right? Like if you meet with an astrologer, or you meet with a medium, and they tell you about some things that maybe are forthcoming, write them out, mail it to yourself. So it's postmarked with a date, right? And so then you have proof of the date that you were advised. And then you can see, like if
I don't know about post date, because technically you'd have to open that envelope, right? So someone could say you could have tampered with that envelope, right?
Well, if you write it down and then you mail it to yourself, and then you receive it,
And then you
keep-
never open
And then
it.
you never open it.
Well, then if you never opened it.
Yeah, yeah, but right, but so like
People
Lee,
in
would
front of
that be
you, right?
considered scientifically verifiable or?
I know, I'm so like, I think that's why Dan and I really, right, we get along because we're so strict on certain things. We're like, it can't be that, it can't be that. I spend too much time with Lloyd Auerbach, right?
Right, yeah, Lloyd.
He's so tough. He's like,
Yeah.
can't have this, can't have
Well,
that.
that's good.
Yeah,
Lloyd
big
was,
for this.
my mentor, still is my mentor. I was talking to him so long, and I always have
Oh,
fun
he's
with people.
so he's terrific.
Yeah,
And,
he's a great
I
guy.
have to say that, that's one thing about, guys in the military would always send me pictures and like, what do you think of this? What do you think of that? And all of the pictures, I would say, all right, let me send this to Lloyd. And out of all the pictures I sent, and a lot of them came from soldiers, he's only verified one photo.
Yeah, he sent it to me.
Oh, he did?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I remember
was
that.
terrific.
Remember that. It was, well,
It's from a veteran. He
Uh-huh.
was a Leatherneck. Leatherneck is a motorcycle group for veterans, and he lives in upstate New York. And I happened to be in upstate New York because I do a lot of motorcycle charity. And he said, "Come in my kitchen." So I went in the kitchen, and he said, this is this picture on my wall." And I said, "Okay," and we got into this conversation. So I said, "Why did you say this is this picture on my wall?" He goes, "Oh, I forgot to tell you. There was this lady that I knew. She was in my kitchen and we were eating, and it was a couple of years earlier. And she looked at the picture and she said, 'What is that?' And he said, 'Well, that's the piece of property. I took a picture of it. My father always wanted to build on it. And then my father passed away.' And she was looking in this picture, and it was like a field with grass and everything. And she said, 'That's really weird, but your father's face is in that?' And he said, 'What?' And she said, 'Yeah.' And in the same room is the father's mass card. You know how you go to a funeral parlor and there's like a small picture of the face?
Mhm.
And she took it and she held it right up to the picture. And it's literally the same face, like
Wow.
in this scene. I was like freaked out. So I said, all right, I got to take pictures right there and then. And I sent them to Lloyd. And that just happened about a year ago.
yeah, okay. He sent me a different one from somebody in the military. I thought it might have been
Oh,
you.
yeah, because I had sent him one, a soldier gave this picture to me, and it was really alarming. I mean, to me, it was this helix that was coming out of this little child's face.
That's the one he sent me.
Oh, wow. And
Yeah.
let me tell you, he debunked it. But
Yeah.
till this day, that to me
Yeah.
is amazing because you could actually see the spiral, like a helix that's coming out of the baby's mouth.
Yeah.
And to me, I was just really alarmed. But of course, Lloyd has this whole high level, the light and the camera and the cell phone and the whole big description. But that one to this day, actually, before I show people it, I say, please prepare yourself because it really shocks you when you see it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because it's something you wouldn't normally see.
Dan, you mentioned that you were on like the panels for is it for like,
Family Foundation, yeah.
and it was that like a certification thing for psychics or what? Like
Yeah,
how did that work?
what they'll do, they'll have like, say, it's always and all the ones that I've done have been on a Saturday. So at first I would go out to Bob and Fran's, rest in peace, Fran. Bob and Fran's place out in Lloyd Harbor out on Long Island, and then they just started doing it remotely through
I think it was Skype at the time.
Skype, yes.
Before Zoom, yeah.
Before Zoom, it was Skype, and it was even Skype at his house. And there'd be 7 or 8 people would be there, and we all took a little class on how to be a sitter and what would be considered mediumship, and what would be considered like a psychic impression,
Correct.
which is different than a mediumship.
is,
We'll
that's
talk
correct,
about that. So yeah, we would do like 6 or 7 people. I never said somebody should be certified. And I don't think anybody that I saw on any of the panels has been certified.
But so Dan, was it like were you just sitting there quietly, like letting them say stuff
Yeah, you
about
would
your
sit there
history?
face to face, how are you? And it would be like 15, 20 minutes per person.
So you weren't
And,
saying like, guess what number I'm thinking of kind of thing. It was
No,
all
no, they would
But
sit
I
down
can
and,
tell you from my experience,
Yeah,
when I
yeah.
went to get certified,
Right.
basically it was Skype. And the first thing I had to do was call somebody on a phone. And I just called this person on the phone and they said, hello, and you just have to deliver information.
right,
And then the person says, okay. And then that's it. Like, okay is like your signal to say you stop talking, you hang up the phone. You don't get a yes, you don't get a no, you don't get anything.
Right.
And then I had to run to the Skype. This is 2013, I was certified. So I may have taken the test like 2011 or 2012 because they made you wait like 6 months for your results or something. It was different than now. And the person's face would be on the camera. And you just say, okay, I'm getting this, I'm getting that. This person, you have to give the relation. So I'm bringing through your mother. This is what happened. This is the cause of death. This is what they were sick, and you bring through all this information, and that's what we call evidential. And the person does not say anything. They do not even shake their head. They don't even nod. They don't say anything. And then that person's off. And then they say, all right, 10 minutes, 15 minutes later, log on again. And I talk about this in my second book. But after the whole process, somebody gets on and says, okay, well, you'll get a letter in the mail if you're accepted or not. So at the time, if you got a letter in the mail, then that means you passed. And I found it like rapid, but the waiting in between was like anxiety producing. I was like, I don't know how I'm doing and whatever, but there's just no expression on the person.
So you're expected to be able to read on demand. It's not like something comes through naturally.
No, but you're bringing through, you make a connection and you're just giving it. So the person's just staring at you. They're not validating anything.
Yeah.
So you really have to have that information that's, and that's why we call it evidential mediums. If you pass, the person could give feedback, and so if you were the sitter, they probably ask you to score it in some way.
Yeah, scored as a significant hit, a hit or a psychic impression. Hey, we got a question. Christopher Williams has friendly guy here says, you've been at this for 45 minutes. So do you have anything to share about the Poe Cottage?
Well, we did.
Yeah, we talked about it in the very beginning.
That nothing happened. We had no evidence of any paranormal activity. We did a walk through the house. We took pictures. Dan took recordings. So in terms of any residual Poe energy at the cottage, nothing came through for us, but Kathy received information about certain things in the house, but that is very different from paranormal phenomena being present in the house.
Yeah, way different. And so Christopher, if you tuned in today to hear stuff about the Poe Cottage, you heard it all. So if you wanna log out, go right ahead. And so let's talking about the difference between psychic and a medium. Now it said every medium is a psychic, but not every psychic is a medium. You want to explain that?
Yeah, so basically the main difference is if somebody says I want a psychic reading, and I offer both on my website, psychic is past, present, and future. It's all about your life. You can ask about a relationship, you can ask about a job. It's basically information that's happening for you. When you say I want a psychic medium and I want a mediumship reading, you're expecting to connect with friends and family that are on the other side. So it's clearly coming across with evidential information with who this person is to you, why they would be coming through for you. They have a message, but they also validate their life. Sometimes I get like a really odd nickname, or the person has a very particular story about when the person was a child, and you're like, wow, I haven't thought about that in 15 years, but it brings someone, there's something about that being significant to the person that I'm reading for, because I'm just the translator. So I always say to people, I have this, they're showing me this, I'm not sure why they're showing me this. And then the person's like, wow, that's really incredible, because that's exactly what happened during that period of time. So sometimes they go way back in time because there's something that structurally changes in the family, where either the person ended up living with somewhere else, or they ended up moving, or something big happened in the family. And it's really amazing. Some of these readings to me really are life-changing for a lot of people. And the most important thing that I see when people want the mediumship is there is some level of healing that I see.
Right. Right.
Is there anything you wouldn't tell somebody?
Well, honestly, personally, I had a cousin that I was with at a party, And, he would always tease me. He would say, oh, you spooky lady and all this stuff, funny, but we were like brother and sister. And I walked up to him in a party and I grabbed him by the arm and I said, hey, what's going on? He said, what do you mean what's going on? And I said, you don't look good. And he said, oh boy, if you're saying I don't look good, like, don't scare me. And I said, well, you really need to be checked. And he said, why are you saying that? And I said, because I'm saying it. And because he knew who I was, and what I do, he got himself to a doctor. But the second phone call was, I don't have health insurance. What do I do? And I said, yes, you do. You're a veteran. And he had never used the VA up until that point. And unfortunately, he was diagnosed with cancer. And he went through, chemotherapy. But, without, you really have to be careful and really kind of know how that person will take that.
Like if somebody came through and you got information that, say, a guy was cheating on his wife the entire time they were married, would you relay that to the wife or?
Odd how things come through. Every reading I do is private, so I can't tell you about readings that I've given other people, but there's a lot of information in a reading where certain circumstances can be described where someone could get an impression of something that's either happening or not happening, or why a situation could be happening right now. So I think it's the delivery, and I think a lot of times this is all about communication. You can deliver bad news to, two people can deliver the same bad news. Some person could take it worse. Same bad news. It's how you deliver it,
I have to say that actually, and I've consulted with a number of mediums, psychics, and astrologers. I'm always worried that there's something they're not telling me. I always walk away with that feeling.
People, and I've had this personally in my business, where people say, I'm caring for this elderly person in my life and I want to know when they're going to pass away. And I cannot do that.
Right.
Do you want to know why I cannot do that? Because in my life, and this is a story I tell over and over again, when I came back from Iraq, it was 2005, end of 2005. And one of my friends in Yonkers says, there's a lady that leaves, tea leaves at the place in Yonkers, And I said, geez, I do the coffee, but let me see the tea, And I went running over to this place. And it was the back room of a bar that's still there. It's an Irish place. I go in the back room, I sit down, and she looked me right in the eye and she said, your father's got 6 months. And I was like, oh my God, I just got back, I'm still recovering from Iraq, and here she is telling me he's got 6 months and I just spent a year away from him. So I was really like, oh my God. So I actually designed a whole schedule in my head. I was like, Dad, we're going to go to church every Sunday because you like church, and we're going to go to the diner, and we're going to go food shopping. And then I was making lasagnas and everything. And 6 months later, he was still there. And I was like, okay. And then I was like, I said to my friend that brought me there, I said, that was the worst thing she could have ever said to me, because I'm watching him like he's under a microscope.
Yeah.
And that was in 2006. My father passed away in 2016.
Wow. Well,
that to me is the biggest thing. I would never, ever, ever, and I said this to Lloyd recently, we could all be wrong.
Yeah.
We're human. I mean, I can misconstrue a message I'm getting, or I could, but I mean, I can't do that to somebody.
Well, that was
nice
that you got to spend all that time with your dad.
Yes, but I mean, look at the stress I went through for 6 months. The pressure.
I just got some really sad news that
I can't say.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, like, and it's directly along the lines of what we're talking about now, which is like, do you report bad news or not? And that actually relates to like what Christopher's question and our answer to it too, and it relates to science in a really interesting way, which is like, it's actually kind of cool, like to be able to report a quote, like a negative result. In other words, like nothing happened, and so, but that's actually something that brings up an interesting issue in science, which is that in general, the way that scientific publishing works is like generally you can only really report positive results. Like you did an experiment and something interesting happened, and most journals won't publish like a negative result of like I tried this and it didn't work, because it's not interesting, because either like it's not interesting that it didn't work, or like who knows, maybe you did something wrong and that's why something came out negative. So that creates, it's called like a reporting bias in science. And that's actually something that a lot of skeptics bring up about the psi research, about like, the Gansfeld experiments. They say like, oh, the reason when you do this meta-analysis that's compiling all of these studies, the reason why so many studies compiled together show an overall positive result is because all the negative results just aren't published. But there are actually ways to do like a funnel analysis. There are ways to do statistical analyses to prove that that isn't the case, and that actually this like studies that are negative have been taken into account. And that's, if you want to learn more about that, you can read a book by Dean Radin. I think I forget. He mentions it in several of his books. Maybe he mentions it in several of his books because it's a common theme of criticism against style research, and you're able to do a statistical analysis to make a convincing argument that that's not the case. But an interesting thing is, like in this particular case, like with the Poe Cottage, is actually kind of an example of what you would call like pre-registering. So in science, one way to get around that problem, especially around controversial issues, is you pre-register your study. So that means you announce you're doing the study. You say on this date, we're going to be done with it and we're going to publish our results regardless, good or bad, whatever the hell happens, we're telling you we're going to do the study. And that way you can't hide it, right? Everybody knows you're doing this study and they're waiting for you to give that answer. And so, it kind of puts you in this like pickle of like, that nobody really likes to be in, of like, that's kind of what we did with the Poe study, right? We said, hey, we're going to go and do this investigation. And then nothing happens, and it's like, people want to hear what happened, and if nothing happened, nothing happened, and like you can't change that. And that's something that you have to, it's really important for science, because otherwise, you make shit up, and you can look at it. What I'm saying is, like, it's a good thing for people sometimes to tell you that nothing happened, because it means like, that they're doing it in a legitimate way.
Well, I mean, it's sad that nothing happened, but realistically, not every house is going to have paranormal activity. And if
Exactly.
Of course, on the surface, it seems like, oh, Poe, and she died there, and this would be the place. But like literally, like, I mean, I'm not a medium, but I feel sensitive sometimes when I'm in certain locations, and I felt nothing there.
Yeah. The Merchant's House, I think we can all agree the Merchant's House has got stuff going on.
Yeah.
And every time we've done a show, nothing's happened.
Right.
And does that mean that there's no spirits here?
Exactly. It's a combination.
It's
Exactly.
like fishing. When you go fishing, sometimes you don't catch anything.
Right.
Does that mean there's no fish in the water? No,
Right.
Exactly.
No, but some places are just not,
But Dan and I and Chance did The Spirit of Thomas Paine.
And
that is on YouTube. And if any of you want to see that, we were outside and we had captured sound outside. I mean, it was like, that was pretty incredible, that one. But somebody had a question in the chat actually asking me about what were some of the things I picked up on. The stuff that I remember, I was drawn to the front door. I said quite a lot about the front door, and that there was some kind of like legal activity or some kind of a feeling like it was broken into. And
more than once.
And I turned around and there was a room behind me, and I said that wasn't always a bedroom. There was other stuff, and the guy verified that. And then we went upstairs, and when I went upstairs, I didn't really feel a lot in the upstairs, but I was very much directed out the window. I kept going to that one window, and I was talking about the grounds. I talked about I felt that it was like a burial ground outside.
Right, and then that something across the ways, and it turns out that that's where the house originally was. And,
they said it was moved.
The house was
moved or something.
And you felt in Poe's, the room that was his study, which you did not know, I didn't know when we first walked into it. You described feeling a mental heaviness and almost like a tortured feeling. And I think what I was struck by was the birds. You kept talking about birds, like in that one corner of the upstairs by the chimney, you kept talking about birds, and it turned out that actually there had been a nest of birds in that space, but also that when Poe was living there, he was obsessed with this one type of sparrow. And he had been writing about it while he lived there. So that was kind of
what was her name again? The expert. The expert. She's the one that said the name of the actual bird. The really small birds. Yeah, that was incredible though. She was definitely going to look up a couple other things that I had said. We have to have Andrea. We'll have to have both you guys back up. Yeah, that would be good.
Speaking of shows, I think this one's almost over. Right? Is it? Oh no, oh no, it's almost over.
Oh wow.
Hey, Lee,
you have to tell them you're going to be on my radio show.
Well, you can tell them your radio show, but first, hey Lee, you got anything you
No, that I just mentioned what I was thinking about.
All right, cool. Well, listen, everybody, we wanna thank everybody for tuning in tonight and hanging out with us for so long. Want to thank, of course, Kathy Nadal and my Uber driver tonight, and for coming down. And Kathy, I'm not going to say goodbye because I'm sure we're gonna,
Yes, definitely.
we'll be
Yeah.
doing stuff in the near future. Matilda, you got anything? Does Merchants House have anything coming up?
No, just go to the website, sign the letter. Oh, coming up, yes, actually, in 2 weeks from yesterday, in the last of the first 3 of my Ask deaf professional person series, I'm going to be interviewing Monica Torres, who is it's Ask an Embalmer. Monica is a young Latina embalmer. She's great. She has said no question is off limits, so please write in. You can register on merchantshouse.org. You can write in your questions. It's free. I think you'll really enjoy it. And if you go to the YouTube channel, you can see the first 2 of that series, Ask the Funeral Director and Ask a Death Doula. They're both on the Merchants House YouTube channel.
And Kathy, tell everybody about your radio show and how do people get a hold of you
Yes.
and for reading. I've never had a reading.
Oh, wow.
I've
Well,
never
you
had
should
that.
really do a coffee cup reading, actually. My radio show was on
Jack
14
Daniels reading. But
radio show was on 1490, which is in Tampa in Florida. It's an AM radio station that streams live around the world. It's a weekly radio show that plays live at 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Every week I have a new guest, and you are coming up in the next couple of Thursdays, so you're going to be on in April. His show is really, really great. My website is www.dreamcentralstation.com. My Instagram is catwitchnyc, and I'm also on Facebook.
All right.
Yeah, thank you so much. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you.
Oh my God,
Thank you.
Kathy, and thanks everybody, and please go to the website and send that letter. And if you can't come by the Merchants House and take a tour in October, which they'll probably start promoting soon for all the ghost tours,
Yeah.
they sell out really, really fast. So keep your eyeballs peeled for that. And we will see you in a month. And what's the show? Do we know what the show is?
We don't know yet. We're still talking.
Tune in for the
about it.
surprise. And
Or write in with suggestions.
yeah, that'd be cool. That'd be really cool.
Mhm.
All right, everybody. So from the Treadwells, we wish you a happy Good Friday, and you guys hope everybody has a fabulous weekend. Happy Easter to everybody that celebrates, and yeah, be well.
Okay.
All right.
Yeah, bye, guys.
See
Bye,
you,
guys.
Lee.
Bye, Lee.
See you, Lee. Hi to Marta.
Yep. Have a great weekend.
All right, you too. Bye bye. Hey, there we are. Look at us.
Yeah.